Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Next Level Interview Show. My name is Chris Vaglio, and I am the CEO of Rocket Growth Agency and Business Development Executive with Urban Creative. And my co-host is
Dr. David Kunick, CEO of UCS Advisors and Investor Relations. I'm an investor relations and networking expert, and I'm happy to be here, Chris. Because, Chris, why are we here today?
We are here today, and once again, thank you all for watching and listening to this, but we are here today for a couple reasons. One is that David and I are super excited to be coming back to NECANN Boston once again to host our in-person workshop, How to Raise Your Social Capital to Raise Capital. And this workshop, we did it last September at NECANN. It was great. We got some awesome feedback, and once again, they asked us back to do it again. So we're going to be March 19th, Saturday morning at 9 a.m. doing our workshop. And I'm going to let Dave describe this workshop if this is the first time you're ever hearing about it.
So the main reason for this workshop is this. I have been in the cannabis industry for over a decade. I've started 7 different cannabis companies in 5 different states, and it is tough to raise money. It is just difficult to raise money. And to be quite frank, Chris knows, and I know, when he goes to raising money, you get a lot of negativity, and it's not that easy to do. But one of the easiest ways to raise money for your company is to work on your networking skills and to do what we call some green nuggets of information. So this 3-hour interactive workshop where will be learning, doing some role playing, and actually talking about real life situations will benefit you. We're doing it March 19th at NECANN Boston. We did it before, and to be quite frank, if you come and sign up before March 1st, there's actually a discount for attending. And Chris, what's the other reason why we're attending NECANN Boston?
So the other reason why you're attending NECANN Boston is, number one, to build relationships, to get there, to meet all kinds of great folks who are involved in the cannabis industry. And we're just super excited to be there, to develop these relationships, to meet with a bunch of new people. And on top of that, also learn, because learning about what's going on in the industry and also sharing the knowledge that we have with others always makes the community that much better. And we're just super excited to be able to be going back up there again, meeting some great people. And that's also why we're doing this little show, because what we want to do is not only talk about our workshop, but we also want to share some of the people that we have met with and give them a chance to talk about their experiences with coming to NECANN, their experiences in the cannabis industry, and the things that they have to offer. And so we're going to be doing a short series of interviews, starting with today's interview. David, you want to tell everybody about our guest?
Yes, Chris, you hit the nail on the head. Today's guest is Mark Doherty, who has been in the cannabis industry for over 10 years. He's one of the first 15 employees ever hired and worked for a small little NASDAQ company called Urban Grow. And more importantly, Mark knows the indoor commercial agriculture cannabis scene, and he's been to over 5 NECANN Bostons. I'm proud to say I've been to every single one NECANN Boston. So let's have the listeners really listen to someone who's been there for the last several years and why he still attends every single year. First off, thank you for being here. Tell our listeners in about a minute or so a little bit about you, what you do in cannabis, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. So thanks so much, Dr. David, Chris. Thanks, guys, for having me on. This is awesome. I got started in growing plants indoors on a commercial scale back in 2010. I built an indoor aquaponic farm. That's how I started. Prior to that, I was not in commercial ag or agriculture or growing cannabis or any of these things. Got started then and then segued into really cannabis-specific projects in that realm. From there, I ended up spending 5.5 years with a company called Urban Grow. Went from, I was employee number 11 to over 80 employees, big publicly traded, NASDAQ publicly traded company. Did a lot of fun things with them. One of the coolest things though. Yes, sir.
Mark, so this for the listeners, and this is really important. You were employee number 11 of a company that is now on the NASDAQ, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, which was
so for all the listeners, this is about networking. It's about knowing people in the industry, and Mark's gonna be at NECANN. But Mark, keep telling the audience about your background.
Yeah, absolutely. So I left there back in September, but when I was with Urban Grow, I managed operations for the company. I worked on about 300 cannabis cultivation facility projects all over the U.S., every legal state in the U.S., all over coast to coast in Canada. And I've worked with companies, big companies like Trulieve, Kronos, Organigram, and I've worked with small companies or regional companies like Solar or King's Garden or, these types of more regional companies. And I've gotten to see just so much, right? It's just been so much fun because at the end of the day, growing plants indoors is something I'm really passionate about. And, the cannabis industry is something I'm very passionate about. So being able to combine those two things has been just a ton of fun. I more recently have been out on my own. So I've got a group called Doherty Agriculture, really sort of a holding company for various projects that I'm getting plugged into. So one of those projects you can see behind me. Look at that. I managed to point to it, even though I'm on a reverse screen right now.
Well
That's
done.
good.
Not too shabby.
10 points.
Not too shabby. Is Dual Draft, Integrated Hydro Solutions. So I met the gentleman who founded Integrated Hydro Solutions. They came up with this product called Dual Draft. It integrates the airflow system into the fully draining plant tray for vertical farming. Eliminates microclimates and drainage issues, which anybody who's growing plants on racks, I don't care if you're growing cannabis or strawberries, if you're doing it in a vertical system, you're dealing with these issues. This product solves those. I've been helping that company bring their product to market, went through the R&D, went through production, sales, marketing, capital raise, all of that kind of stuff that you have to do to launch a new business and a new product. Also working with cultivators, a couple of whom are actually in the Northeast, which they'll be attending NECANN this year as well. But the couple there in the Northeast where we're really looking at cap raises for them, expansion, and aligning the C-suite with the cultivation team, right?
So in other words, and I think it's really key and important to bring this up to the listeners. And something about you, Mark, is that with Dual Draft, one, you are going to make sure that there's better product produced, less waste, which means more profits, which means it helps out the investors. And this is all circles back to kind of wired someone to, it's important to have someone like a Mark Doherty in your wheelhouse. It's important to have someone like a Mark Doherty who's done stuff on the West Coast, East Coast, Midwest, over 300 facilities. And Mark, with some of the stuff that you're doing, are you speaking at NECANN Boston at all, or are you having a booth at all at NECANN Boston?
You know what? I'm not speaking this year. This is actually the first year in like 6 that I'm not speaking.
Chris,
wow.
On the show then.
I don't know. I mean, I just it's the first year I'm not, which is all right. I mean, I appreciate all the opportunities I've had at NECANN over the years to speak. I mean, quite honestly, I've taken some pretty wacky tracks at NECANN just because I felt like I could. I felt like I had that freedom. With Mark and all the folks that set up NECANN and run NECANN. They've given me a lot of opportunity over the years. So that's great. I'll be at NECANN for sure. I will most likely be there supporting IHS, supporting Dual Draft, also there to meet with clients that are there and to enjoy their company and to socialize. I plan to do plenty of socializing.
So you're a sociable person, and people can come up and actually talk to you. They shouldn't be afraid to you.
I think I'm a pretty sociable person. Yeah.
Mark, I know you are, but for everyone here, this is something where we tell people in our seminar how to raise your social capital, to raise capital. Go to an event like NECANN Boston. Meet someone like a Mark Doherty. I mean, that you've been there for over a decade. Yeah, your knowledge is phenomenal, and you're an approachable guy. You're just walking the floor. Like you and I are friends, and it was literally just you and I meeting at a booth.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and we clicked. And I'll tell you a funny story. So I'm doing a project right now where I'm part of the buy side on a set of cultivation licenses. I met the seller 9 or 10 years ago at a conference that was attended by maybe 200 people, 250 people in New York City. It was a one-day conference in a hotel. I think it was the people who do NECANN, or not NECANN. Sorry, I think it was the people who do MJ BizCon. Before they were even doing MJ BizCon, or maybe the first year they did MJ BizCon, they were also doing these little mini conferences. And I met a handful of people there. This gentleman who's selling these licenses was one of those people, and I've been friends with him ever since. And
It's amazing.
I think part of it is we think this industry, this cannabis industry, is moving in lightning speed, right? Things are evolving and changing so quickly that sometimes I think we don't really realize that, relationships and it's still kind of a long game, right?
Yeah.
And it matters. Longevity matters. Being here, doing what you say you're going to do today, tomorrow, and 10 years from now is important. So I'm grateful, and NECANN's played a huge role because NECANN, I'm from the Northeast. I'm originally from upstate New York. When I first started with Urban Grow 6 years ago, I was their director of sales out East. My job was to build their book of business in the East Coast, which we did. And a large part of that was NECANN. The very first trade show that I did on behalf of Urban Grow was in 2016. And that was NECANN. And it was a hell of a lot of fun. Funniest thing is, so is
this your funniest story you have for NECANN?
No, I've got so many funny stories from NECANN.
All right, so what's your number one?
It's so hard. It's so hard to pick one. So you want to know one of the funniest stories? So sure. We had a booth. We had our Urban Grow booth, and this is maybe the second or third year. And I brought a guy from Colorado, where Urban Grow's headquarters is, out to Boston to be with us and to help support at the trade show. Trade show gets done, right? And one of our crates that we're trying to repack had shattered during shipping. So we needed a way to repack this thing to get it back to Colorado. So I go over and ask, if we can get some help. Long story short, they send a gentleman out from the union, and the gentleman comes out and does a pretty quick job rewrapping this thing. My friend and colleague from Colorado says, "Hey, all $50, that's all we get," or something like that. This guy turns around, and all the union guy had to do was look at him. And it scares the hell out of my buddy from Colorado. And he says, "You got a problem?" And that was it. My buddy hightailed it out of there, and the union guy went back to his job. They're hardcore. These union guys, these Boston union guys, are nothing to mess with. I want no trouble. I want zero
mess
with those guys. What else is a good
story? So let me answer this question for our listeners, okay?
Yeah.
Because we want to know why someone like a Mark Doherty chooses to attend NECANN Boston. So why are you attending NECANN Boston? What made you choose to come this year?
One, it's like old home week, as they call it. I go back to that area and I see 40, 50 cultivators, owners, operators, investors in real world facilities that are up and running, that are doing the deal on a day-to-day basis, growing high quality product and putting it into the market in Massachusetts, Vermont, Maine, Connecticut, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, New York, and these are people that
you brought that up. Yeah.
That are coming.
People all throughout the U.S. now come to this event in Boston.
And just the quality of cultivator and projects that have gone on just in the Massachusetts area, right? So I'd say the majority of people are in NECANN are coming from New England, right? Typically, and with a heaviest concentration, obviously, being Massachusetts. And why wouldn't it? The number of companies that have sprung up in Massachusetts, and cultivators that have sprung up is phenomenal. So the concentration of just good people that I want to surround myself with and spend time with, they're all right there. So that's my number one reason. Even if I wasn't showing or whatever, I would still go because it's a good time and I get to see a lot of people who I'm invested in their success. I spent all this time with them, helping them get their projects up and running, and now I like going back and they're expanding, they're bringing on new strains, they just developed a new product line, new SKUs, they're adding to their team. The other thing I love seeing is someone who started out with a company wearing all the hats, and now they're like, "Hey, I just hired the marketing person, and I just hired the whatever."
Chris, I know that one very well.
Yes, absolutely.
What was that?
as I say, Chris and I know exactly what you're talking about on that one.
Yeah.
You know, and about diversity. So now, as someone who's been in cannabis for over a decade, I love asking people this question. What is your favorite part about attending a cannabis conference on the East Coast? Because you and I both know from firsthand experience, no offense, Chris, you haven't experienced a West Coast cannabis conference
okay.
yet. Yeah. Keyword being yet, though.
Yes.
Mark, you and I have experienced conferences on both sides, on both coasts.
Yeah.
But what is one of your favorite parts about attending a cannabis conference out here on the East Coast?
Yeah, I guess it's kind of goes back to that story I told about the union guy, right? That sort of like, that attitude, right? Like I fit in on the East Coast. It's where I'm from,
Right.
People oftentimes, I'll be in Colorado where I live now, and I'll be having what I think is a normal conversation, and somebody will inevitably ask me why I'm angry, and I'm not. I'm just expressing myself. Like I am what I am,
It's that East Coast vibe, man. The East Coast vibe.
Right? Like it's different. It's a different pace, right? It's a
It
different pace of life in Boston and New York and these areas. It's just different, right? I fit in. The minute I get off a plane in Boston and Logan, I feel at home. I really do. Boston is one of my favorite, without a doubt, my favorite cities in the whole world. And I've been lucky enough to have traveled quite a bit, and I've seen lots of cities and lots of countries. And Boston is a magical, wonderful place, and especially where the Heinz Convention Center, that Back Bay area, is just so cool. It's just such a cool. I remember last year when I left NECANN. We had a big party. I was still with Urban Grow at the time, and every year they throw a big party.
Chris and I went to that party. Thank you again.
I started throwing that party, 5 years ago or whatever it was.
Oh, I remember because it got you. You were like the secret hidden party. I remember the first time attending that party, and it was like, well, where is it? Where do you go? And like, it was like a whole hush thing. I remember that.
Right, but it's like we get like 100 people in the Back Bay Social Club. Like, it gets, and that party does, it gets fun, right? So but I remember we had the party and we had a great show and everything was wonderful. And that last night I was there, I met with some colleagues and I walked, a couple blocks over to this great sushi place, and, everybody's out and about and it was beautiful weather and just the vibe, right? I mean, it's just wonderful. And then to see all these cannabis businesses flourishing in the Northeast, where, like, I'll never forget, man, when I was in college, my first round of college, when I was like 18, right out of high school, I went to a little private school in the Adirondacks of upstate New York. And I remember at the last minute, I had to write a paper for like an English class. And so I wrote about, marijuana. We didn't call it cannabis back then. We weren't that cool. Marijuana should be legal, right? And I write this paper. I do it, like over the course of an evening. When it's due the next day, I hand it in. A couple days later, I meet the class. Teacher says, "Hey, I want to see you." Pulls me up afterwards. He says, "Listen," he says, "this isn't a terribly written paper." He says, "You're a pretty good writer." He says, "But I am so effing bored of this topic coming up at this college that after 30 years of teaching here, I just don't want to read it anymore." He says, that's the first thing. So he says, the second thing is, it's never going to happen in your lifetime. Right? That was his position on it. Like marijuana, cannabis legalization, it's never going to happen in your lifetime. And I can remember, like, maybe we all didn't, but I just watched Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg, right?
Yeah.
Take the stage at the Super Bowl halftime show. I can remember when I was listening to The Chronic, as a kid, people, adults around me, people around me in my sphere, really being critical of that messaging, really being critical of the fact that, I was listening to an album that seemed to promote cannabis consumption, right? And now you walk into, the Back Bay Social Club and have a huge party on why are we all there, right?
Exactly.
It's just like, and that's, I'm 42 years old. So I remember 14, I think I was, well, maybe I was 12, 13, 14 when the Chronic came out, right? That's not a very long period of time, for the whole attitude has changed. The whole world is changing, and to be part of that. And I think the Northeast is a big part of that. I think there's great cannabis culture there. There's a long history of cannabis there in the Northeast, right? Where I was in the Adirondacks, for sure. I remember, we used to get the outdoor, and if the outdoor went through a frost, not a freeze, but a little frost, it'd be purple. Yeah, it was the first time I'd ever seen purple flower. Of course, now I understand that much better. I understand how we can get those traits and stuff. It's just amazing to me, the whole thing.
It really is.
So,
Agreed.
Mark, we're going to have to wrap this up. Quick side note, in NECANN Boston, it's usually held in March during March Madness. And if you're lucky, if any of the games are being played in Boston, because Mark and I were both at the same NECANN Boston, where the West Virginia basketball team was right outside the conference center with all the marching band and the cheerleaders doing their fight song while you're walking into NECANN Boston. Kind of cool. So, Mark, in the last 20 seconds, tell our viewers right now why they should attend NECANN Boston on March 18th and March 20th.
Absolutely. Yeah. If you're in the Northeast, you're in the cannabis industry, you're operating in the cannabis industry, or you're looking to be an operator in the cannabis industry in New England, New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, in that market, NECANN is absolutely the place that you want to be. You're going to make great connections. You're going to see a lot of cool products and services that are there to help support your efforts, and meet a lot of other just like-minded folks, and have a really good time.
Great. Thank you so much, Mark, for being here today. Really appreciate it. Chris, got anything else to add?
I appreciate you, Mark. Thank you so much for coming on and spending some time with us today. And look forward to seeing you at NECANN this year, my friend.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys.
Once again, for all the listeners, thank you for listening. I am Dr. David from UCS Advisors. This is Chris Fagel from Market Growth Agency. And if you are in town, don't miss out. From March 18th to March 20th, NECANN Boston. And what else should they check out, Chris?
Well, they should also check out, too, our workshop, which is going to be how to raise your social capital to raise your capital. You can get tickets for our in-person workshop. That's right. I said the words in-person workshop right now by heading over to NECANNnextlevel.com. If you're watching this, you can see the URL on the screen. If not, you can also access all the links that we were talking about right in the show notes. So you can get direct tickets to NECANN, direct tickets for our workshop, and also, most importantly, connect with our guest, Mark Doherty, who was so gracious enough to come on and spend some time with us today. So thank you all so much for watching and listening to Next Level, and we'll see you next time.